And bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar, my name is Craig Toth, your host of Minor League News and Brews, talking about everything around the Pirates minor league system and giving you some beer reviews at the end of the show. We've moved into June. We're going beyond the small sample sizes. My West Virginia Mountaineers have made it to the Super Regionals for the first time in team history. I was up way too late last night watching college baseball, but I'm up this morning and I am bringing back for the second time. He's got his feet wet. He's gone on some road trips. We're about 2 months in here. Thomas Zinzarella at Zins21. He is the broadcaster. He is the voice of your Bradenton Marauders. Thomas, how you doing today, brother?
Good, good. I was watching college baseball yesterday too. I know you're not the only guy up there watching late. I know Carlson Reed, one of your Mountaineers as well. He's probably pretty pumped to see his old squad advance to the supers.
Yeah, and it was a crazy game because they went up and then they went down, and then it was just a range of emotions. And I was watching it in the silence of my living room, and I just kind of gave the fist pump and everything when it happened. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to go to bed. I'm old. The kids, as I was talking about before, have their first day of summer break today, so I knew I was going to be busy, and I knew I was going to be talking to you about some Marauders baseball. But the first month of the season did not go, I guess, probably any way that the Marauders would have hoped. New manager, new hitting coach. Started out the year, I believe it was 5-17 for the month of April. Have kind of turned that around, sitting at 21-30 right now. What is the change that maybe you saw in the team that has kind of, flipped the script on this season a little bit?
Yeah, no, I mean it was those first kind of 9 games. They got swept in that first road series in Lakeland against the Flying Tigers and the Detroit Tigers affiliate. But even two, I think they had a wild series at home then against Daytona. Had two walk-offs, and I'd say the pitching was the one thing that really kind of pushed forward after those first 9 games. A little bit of struggle and out of the bullpen. They walked a lot of guys in that series in Lakeland, and so that really hurt them. And I think the offense too. They had chances to score runs in some of those games in the early series. I remember, with bases loaded with nobody out, and they only get 1 or 2 runs across, and that's because it was a walk or a wild pitch or something. And so, I think that the hitting has vastly improved from the start of the season. And I think injuries too played a little bit of part. They didn't have Eddie Rodriguez to start the season. Kalai Harrison was injured. He just had multi-hit game on Sunday and reached base 3 times. So there are a couple guys that are missing out on the lineup. But I mean, the one really litmus test too is I have it in front of me. That's why I was at the end of April. I remember, we were in Clearwater playing the Threshers, who were about to start playing this week again, and they're currently the best team in the Florida State League. And they we went in there and we ended up playing. I think the whole series we played 4 one-run games, 2 other games decided by 2 runs. We won one of those one-run games 1-0. PJ Helson, who's crushing it right now in Greensboro, I had a go-ahead home run in the 8th inning. I mean, it was a fun series, and they didn't get the results. They lost 5 of 6, but that was the end of April, and that was kind of the test. I was like, well, they lost 5 of 6, but they played a lot better than what their record indicated at the end of the month there. And then obviously they turned it over into the end of April and in that 12-game homestand where they ended up winning 11-12. So I was like, you kind of smelled something there, but I definitely say the pitching has been the headliner. Guys, rotation especially, and then the bullpen has only gotten better and better too. Gary McMillan's throwing the baseball really well right now, as is Mike Walsh, came back from the injured list. But again, I think it's the starters and just over end, finding their footing finally. I think even the hitters too. You'll start to see it these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'm gonna have you nail down some of those guys here. It's basically, I mean, we've seen some good pitching performances, like you said, some hitters, maybe coming into their own, guys coming back from injury. But if you had to pick, like, I mean, just a couple pitchers that have, really impressed you so far in this early going of the season. I mean, I know it's I said it's June, but there's still not a ton of innings racked up. We don't know what innings limits are on guys. We don't know exactly how long they're going to go. We don't know what the plans are for the rest of the season, but just kind of maybe pick out a couple pitchers that have performed so well, perform well so far for the Marauders.
Yeah, let's go start right off the bat with their opening day starter, Carlson Reed. One of your Mountaineers was the closer for them last year, and so that's kind of guy right now. He's starting to push his innings limit from what he pitched last year. But he's a guy that has been really consistent this year. He's had high strikeout number games. I think he's had a couple 6 to 8 range, and usually he's gone 6 innings twice this year. But he's a guy that's one of the best ground ball rates in the organization. So he's got a nice little sinker ride that's getting those ground outs, and for him to being in the starter and for him to pitch this well, and he started a little bit in college too at West Virginia from what you probably know as well. So it's not like a brand new thing to him, but it's a little bit of adjustment from being a closer last year in college, then come out of the rotation. That's obviously what he wants to do, what the Pirates want him to do. The other guy is Michael Kennedy. He's been about as consistent as possible. He's not going to overpower you with his fastball. It's about 92, 93. But it's just enough with a really good changeup and a really good slider to really mix guys up. And he's had a few very high strikeout number games as well. He leads a team with strikeouts with 50. And I know for him, he had, until this last start, he was probably one of his, probably not so great starts to the season, but he had 6 starts in a row, went at least 5 innings. And so I think that's a huge thing too. And he's kind of an old kind of throwback type of pitcher. Again, he's not going to power you with a fastball, but he uses it well in his spot. You'd be surprised how many swings and misses he gets with it. It's not 97, 98, but you don't have to throw that hard, and he's kind of proven that, at this level. You don't have to throw hard to get guys out. And he's just always in the zone too. I think that's the biggest thing for him, is that he's always in the strike zone. So he uses the defense behind him, and yet he still picks up a lot of strikeouts, which is nice to have as well. And then I'd say, Christian Curtis is coming off of really good last 2 starts now. He went 6 innings on Saturday, which it was a doubleheader, so it's technically a complete game, which is 25th in franchise history. And so he's starting to throw the ball really well too. He's starting to see his ERA come down a little bit. Homer and Bud kind of bit him early in a couple of starts where, infield single there was one I remember against Daytona, like infield single on a swinging bunt, and then the next guy it's a line drive home run that just sneaks out at Lecom Park. So it's like, man, that's a tough way to give up a 2-run homer in there. But I'd say to the bullpen, Landon Tompkins, he's been the closer. He's got 6 saves this year, and he's been throwing really well. Try to find. There's a lot of guys. Peyton Stumbo has got an electric curveball. He's got a lot of strikeouts with it as well. Trying to see Magdio Cotto, the infamous turtle incident. He was the hero, but he's got a couple saves under his belt too. And again, I think for him, and when he's in the zone, he's about as good as there anybody is in this league. So, big power lefty, sits in mid-90s, slider, changeup. So there's a lot of intriguing arms on this team, and there's a lot of the guys I didn't even mention. Connor Oliver, who they picked up in a trade in April. He's now in the rotation role. He did pitch out of the bullpen on Sunday because we had a rehabber go and for the first couple innings. So there's a lot of arms in this team that are fun to watch. So if you're in the Florida area, definitely come out to Lecom Park.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned, like with a Kennedy, is that he did struggle for an outing, and I feel like that as fans, we saw Jared Jones have a tough outing up here, so to kind of equate that to the major league, is that even these guys that are dominating at times and pitching well at times, it's like we almost like expect them not to have some sort of hiccup, and those types of outings are going to happen. You don't know what stuff's working for them, what stuff's not. So it's not every outing is going to be like these kind of lights out performances. But moving to the position player side of things, we've had some players that have, kind of come on as of late. We've had some guys that have been performing throughout the season. You've had, some trades that have been finalized and players that have, spent a couple days in the FCL and then come up. I think everybody knows who I'm probably talking about at that point in time from the JT Brubaker trade. But let's nail down a few guys from the position player side of things that have been impressing down at Lecom.
Yeah, I'd say definitely Omar Alfonso. He continues to impress. I know he just had, I think it was a 15 or 16 game on base streak come to an end. He's had a couple of those this year, and a couple of 7 game hitting streaks as well, as Eddie Rodriguez. I think both guys. Alfonso, he continues to walk a lot too, and that's the other thing that's very underrated is that, I mean, there was during that streak he had like 15, 16 walks. I mean, it was something insane. He had the second most walks in minor league baseball during that span of like the 2 week span. Um, Obviously, you mentioned Connor Delgado, a guy who's hit another home run on Saturday. It was a little bit in between. He came out of the gate hitting, home runs in 4. I think his first 5 games in the Pirates work, 1 in the complex, and then a couple out of the gate with the Marauders. But he's an intriguing guy, being a switch hitter, and he's got some power and able to play second base. Played over at shortstop this year as well. Rylan Bishop is a guy that's really starting to come on here. I mean, he obviously was a higher touted guy out of high school, and that's only back in 2021, and injuries a little bit this year have played a part. And he got injured in that first road trip in Lakeland, and he was out for a good almost month of the season then. And he's starting to finally get back healthy, and you're seeing the results. He had a go-ahead home run, a 3-run home run in the 7th inning on Wednesday of this past week, and there was a stretch that he just had his, I think, 7-game hitting streak, 8-game hitting streak snapped. It was 8. It was the longest streak by a Marauder this year. And when he's hot, man, he's fun to watch. And he can also run. So when he's on the base paths, he's a threat too, as is Delgado. So that's what makes this Marauders team so dangerous, is that when they get guys on, they get multiple guys to really fluster some pitchers out there. But Shalene Polanco too, I know obviously he's a top 30 guy, but the numbers overall they might not look good, but these last 6 games or so now, I know the last 5 going into Sunday, he was hitting, I think, over almost 400 with like a 600 on base. He's walked a lot more. So I think he may be starting to find and turn a corner here, which would be another, just again, make this lineup even deeper. But again, I think Eddie Rodriguez is really impressed this year too, as Maryland Valdez. He's had a couple long on base streaks, and I think when he struggled a little bit more in the month of May, but he had a really good month of April, and that was a guy that I think people said told me they said they've been impressed with him so far. He's more of a first baseman and kind of corner outfielder, but I think left and right. But to Saul McGuire is one guy too. I mean, I know he's signed out of Australia, and there are games when he's on, it's fun to watch. I mean, he's really a 5-tool player, and so when he able to elevate the ball and leave the yard with his speed and his strong arm in the outfield. I mean, he's still young. I believe he's only 21. So he's a guy that if he starts to really put it all together and consistently, I mean, he's a guy that I really like. And last one I'll say is Axiel Plaz. I mean, I could say something about every one of these guys how I like them, but Axiel Plaz, he came up from the complex, I think more in part due to more of a catching shortage. At one point we're in Tampa, and Alfonso was our only catcher. Garrett Forrester had went on the injured list the couple days before, and then Justin Mickness was placed on the injured list. And so the next day, we only had for that game. Then when Mickness left in the first inning, we only had Alfonso was our only catcher on the roster, and we had John Lopez, who was on the development list and was in the bullpen as our catcher for that night. So he obviously we had one catcher to get through, and so Plaz gets called up, and that first couple of games in Tampa, I mean, it was incredible. He hit the longest home run right now, as it stands today, in the Florida State League, 453 feet in Tampa, which, I mean, the ball flies off his bat. I know the 2 of the first 3 games in Tampa, he had the hardest exit velo in the FSL. I will say one caveat is that the wind was blowing out to left field, so still would have gone 453 with no wind. Probably not, but still, man, he crushed. It was a no-doubter. I mean, it still would have gone at least 420, 430. So it was a moonshot, and everybody in the ballpark knew it. So he's when he gets hold of it, man, you can hear it, and it'll fly.
Yeah, and that's some exciting stuff. And you've mentioned, just a lot of names here. I mean, there are some guys that are a little bit more on the younger side. There's guys that, I mean, not old for the league, but they are maybe kind of pushing towards, maybe should be in Greensboro, different type of stuff like that. But a lot of people just kind of look at the age and then don't look at, like the injury history. Like you said, I mentioned like a Solomon McGuire. Probably people didn't even know that Braylon Bishop was out for a period of time. So you're looking at like, and not every guy develops like at the same pace. We get all excited with, the younger players that come up at the major leagues and they're making their debuts at, 19, 20, 21 years old, and you're thinking, okay, well, this guy's 21 in the Florida State League. Well, but you don't know their history, you don't know what's going on with them. But before we jumped on here, I told you I was going to put you, you know on the hot seat just a little bit. Is that to kind of look for guys that, with the FCL ending earlier, with the draft, I know that it's not super impending, but it's going to be here before we know it.
Mhm.
And some guys, especially if you get like a college bat or something, would hopefully be added to the Marauders roster. But who are some guys that you think may be pushing their way north to Greensboro?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a number of guys that I said that probably could, whether the Alfonsos and, um, you know, those type of guys. I think too, it always depends too, like what the organization needs. Because I think why PJ Hilson went up is that they needed a spot for an outfield. I know Siane was going up, and so they needed a spot in the outfield, and so Hilson was the guy to go to. But I think too, there's so many guys just because most of the Marauders, I think, in around the Pirates org, they're so versatile. Like for example, Clyde Harrison's played second, short, third. Connor Delgado's same thing. So I mean, there's a lot of cases for most of these guys to get a call up. I could see as Merlin Valdez getting a call up, or Alfonso, or Eddie Rodriguez. It kind of just depends on the Pirates end of things. Do they feel they're ready to make the jump? And obviously, age is a little bit of part of it to go into it. But like you mentioned McGuire, he's dealt with injuries too, kind of like what Bishop has. And so I think you know we'll see. With the crunch of the rosters, it kind of makes things interesting for us to just talk about. Who do we see maybe getting the move up and the bump up, and it's a different ballpark up there in Greensboro too. It's more of a hitter friendly park than it is at Lecom or Altoona, which is always the interesting thing too, because pitchers that go up to Greensboro, then it's like, oh well, if you're a fly ball pitcher, then well, it might not be your best friend there in Greensboro, but yeah, I'd say there's a number of guys. I think most of the guys I listed each have a case to maybe earn a promotion this year.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of it could depend on, organizational need, guys that could be bumped from Greensboro up to Altoona and not knowing, guys dealing with injury, developmentalists. I mean, there's so many moving parts to the minors. I could only imagine like the spreadsheets that exist in like maybe like John Baker's office or something as to, the moving parts that stuff's going to have to go up or down. Last week, I had, or maybe it was the week before, I had Eric Garfield, and he's a guy that is, roving down through the FCL at Eric Birdland. I know he's an Orioles guy, but he follows the FCL Pirates and the Marauders as well. And was talking about some guys performing in the FCL a little bit, more on the older side of that league. But before we hopped on here again, we talked about, if there was maybe some guys that were performing down in the FCL that you were looking forward to seeing and calling games for up there in Bradenton.
Yeah, I know. I know we talked about at the beginning of the season too about maybe some guys that I thought could make the break to Bradenton. I think one of those guys was Xander Booth. I said he's on the younger side, obviously a high school draft pick, but he still seems like from the numbers, I haven't watched him pitch at all, but I haven't ventured out to the backfields at all in Pirate City. But from his numbers, it looked good, and it could be one of those things too. I know we saw guys like Michael Kennedy, and a lot of the guys this year with Marauders roster is the same thing, where they just dip their toes a little bit at the end of the season in August in Bradenton, just to kind of get that feel for it, so that when they do come back for the next year, and I've talked to a lot of guys about that who've done that, and they said, well, boy, that really helped just to kind of, all right, get my my footing underway, because I mean it's a big difference going from the complex to full season affiliate. Maybe just down the road, but I mean there's so many ways, especially for high school guys that they haven't had that experience before. And so Zandermuth is a guy. Okay, maybe we'll see him at some point in August if the Pirates feel he's ready. I know some of the batters we talked about too with Tony Blanco Jr. and Yordan de los Santos. You got a bit of a cup of coffee up in Bradenton last year, so those could be some guys. And that's what baseball's so hard. There's always guys behind you, in front of you, and they're blocking you, or guys coming up to come up and challenge you for some playing time. And it makes it exciting at the same time, just to maybe get some new fresh faces in. Loved covering these guys so far in Bradenton. But obviously having a guy like Zandermuth, if you throw him in this pitching staff and rotation, even if he's a bullpen arm, if he comes out at first, or as a rotation piece, I mean, it's already I've already said, the pitching has been just so fun to watch. The offense comes and goes as it does in baseball. I feel like, you can always pitch your way into the game. And I think Bradenton has really done that this year. I just know this month of May, they had the 7th best bullpen ERA in minor league baseball. So they had a 2.73. There's a lot of, they've got some older arms down there like Hunter Furtado and Magdo Cotto, guys that pitched in the SEC before. So they've got some SEC, arms, 21, 22-year-olds that have been there, done that. And, a lot of college guys down there. So they're more older than they are than, guys like Michael Kennedy, even Antoine Kelly. I forgot to mention him. He's a guy in the rotation that has really started to find his way, and he's 20 years old. So there's a lot of really young arms here, and it's scary to think in the Pirates org, already have so many great pitchers in the org, and it seems like the rich keep getting richer.
Yeah, well, I won't mind it. I'll take it in. The one thing I'm going to ask you before I let you go, I'm going to put you on the hot seat again, and I thank you for taking some of these tough questions and everything. But if you could maybe pick one guy out who maybe hasn't performed to his talent level this year, that you may see that could be on the verge of kind of finding stuff. And I know people always say like quote unquote breaking out, but who's a guy that has been putting that in, and it looks like maybe things are kind of finally starting to click for him.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned to Shalene Polanco a little bit before, and obviously he had a pretty overall good first season last year in Bradenton, and he's hit the ball hard a number of times this year. I know even last week, I said his last 5 games, he's hit over 350, high on base, and so he's a guy that's hit the ball hard all year, and obviously he's got 5 home runs, which is tied for the team lead. So he's not really obviously a breakout type of guy, but I just think that he's a guy that's just due for a really good month at some point soon. And just looking at his numbers from last week, I mean, he went 4 for 13 in the series with like 4 or 5 walks. Yeah, I think 4 walks then. So all stole 2 bases on Sunday too. And I think even too, Connor Delgado obviously started off really hot as we saw. Kind of fell back to earth a little bit, but again, he's a young hitting prospect too, and a guy they got from the Yankees in the JT Brubaker trade. I think he's another guy that's very toolsy. He's got a switch hitter hit from both sides. He's really fast. That was the one plus for him. He's got plus speed, and very versatile. I know the one piece we're missing right now is Jesus Castillo's on the 60-day IL, and Garrett Forrest is on the injury list, and Garrett was playing really well before he went on it. Castillo, didn't hit for average really well, and that was the one guy I was like, man, if Castillo, if he hits a little bit higher, like that guy you could see him probably, get promoted. So obviously he's on the shelf right now, but there are a couple other guys that I forgot to mention too. And I think Castillo is a guy I felt due, because he's always putting in those tough ABs, really good sense of the strike zone, doesn't strike out a lot, walks a lot, and just obviously wasn't hitting right now. And I'm like, if he just found a little bit higher average, like, yeah, that guy, he's fun to watch too.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I mean, we pretty much could probably sit on here for an hour, 2 hours, and go up and down the roster and talk about everybody. And if somebody's missed, it's not because it was on purpose. It's like because I'm putting you on the spot here and trying to pull that stuff from you. But Thomas, thank you again coming on here for the second time. I told you that I would check back in once you kind of got your feet wet a little bit and got a little bit of the season underneath you. For those of you that don't, please go follow Thomas at Zins21. Follow at _Marauders, Bradenton Marauders. Listen to the games. I have the radio, but I also have get MILB TV. Watch some of the games. Watch some of these guys. Thomas, this was a great time again. Thanks for jumping back on, and can't wait to do it again, brother.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
If you ever see me out and about in Pittsburgh, you will always recognize me, and not just because of the white beard, but also because of the Y that is always on top of my head, the hat I always wear. The Yins brand, proud partners with Bucks in the Basement. 3 dynasties, 1 brand, Yins. Finally, 1 brand to rep all black and gold. Follow at Shop Yins for new merch drops and giveaways. Order online at www.shopyins, the emphasis on the 2 Z's, high quality comfort, lightweight materials, a new modern look for the black and gold, made for Yins by a Yinzer. All right, guys, we're going to talk about the top 5 Pirates prospects here. I kind of was looking through the stats, watching the games, doing different stuff, and it kind of seemed like I was going to be picking. Honestly, I hate to do repeats, but if they're repeats, they have to be repeats because they are continuing to perform. But I did want to get some new players in there for everybody. But the first, at least 2 or 3 here, are repeats just because. I mean, they've just continued to perform. The biggest one is on, everybody's radar, is on the tip of everybody's tongue. And that would be Matt Gorski with the play of Rowdy Tellez, even though he did have that 3-hit performance and pretty much single-handedly kept the Pirates in the game. The big thing for Pirates fans is trying to solve that first base thing. Gorski is naturally an outfielder, very athletic. I know that both Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton during their shows on Sunday, as well as Cherington's little spot on MLB Sirius XM. I just happened to be listening to it when I was coming back from the store. Was talking about him. Matt Gorski hit his 11th home run on Sunday. And the thing that I looked at here is that he has an OPS over 1,000 in May, a guy that's hitting well. In April, looking at the K rates again, this is something that kind of, gets mentioned all the time, is that he does strike out a decent amount, has, taken that down just a little bit here. But in May and June, and when I say June, it's only a couple days, he has his strikeout rate down to 29.9% from 33.3%. The bigger piece of this is that his walk rate in April was below 4%. It's now up to over 8%. So he's almost doubled that. So, I mean, I think at some point in time, if they see, a continuation of what he's done in May, it's going to be hard to hold him down. It's also going to depend on what they're doing with Rowdy. But, Gorski, if he continues to hit, is going to be a guy that is going to stay on the tip of people's tongues and is going to be looking for a promotion to the major leagues. Number 2, another repeat, Braxton Ashcraft. Andrew Destin from the PG, he had a really good article about Anthony Solomito earlier on in the season. Has another really good article out there on Braxton Ashcraft recently. If you go out and read that, talking about, how last year there was innings limits within games. He knew he was only going to go out there and pitch so many innings. This year, kind of taken it off that he, doesn't have those restrictions anymore and that he has been able to go deeper into games. His last start went 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 base on ball, 7 Ks. Looking at his 4 starts in April, one of the ones that I saw his first, the start on opening day there out in Altoona. In April, he had a 6.91 ERA and a 1.47 WHIP. Since then, at a 3.47 ERA, a 1.14 WHIP, just has really been dominating. So Braxton Ashcraft is a guy I know, and I wanted to get to that, is, talking about the innings limits for games. That has kind of been taken away, but I'm still looking at that innings limits for the rest of the year, how far he can go. Just because, under 50 innings last year, and are they going to stretch him out to 100 innings? Different stuff like that. I've seen him mentioned as an option. He's on the 40-man, added to the 40-man this past offseason, and I believe I even talked about it, possibly him being an option in the bullpen with the struggles that the Pirates bullpen has been having. I know people would say that jump to AA to the majors. A lot of times people will say, though, if he can pitch and the stuff plays, it can play at any level. So if you're going to, limit his innings, obviously you would probably still want him to be a starter for the future, but in the near future, could that be a guy that you tap into to help the struggling and the bullpen woes that have been happening at the major league level? Number 3, another repeat guy, Charles McAdoo. Highlighting him, he had a 5-for-6 day just a couple days ago on Thursday. Coming into May, through May, basically, he had a 335, 414, 541. That's what he was slashing. Couple home runs, 10 doubles, a triple. For the season, he is batting 333. And the OPS is 944. And with not that many home runs, a lot of people say a lot of that time that OPS is, Greensboro Grasshopper ballpark aided, but is, showing some of that power to the gaps, different type of stuff. Talked with Thomas about people that could come up from Bradenton to Greensboro. One of the guys that could make a spot would be Charles McAdoo, possibly going from Greensboro to Altoona. And for the last 2 guys, I did want to, kind of make it, people that have been different. Number 4, somebody that Thomas had mentioned, Mike Walsh. Mike was the 9th round pick out of Yale back in 2022. And for him, he basically, was injured for a time last year. Went out in early May of last year, didn't pitch for the rest of the season. Was injured again this year from April 12th through May 22nd. Only has, I believe it's 19 and a third professional innings so far. So basically just a guy that hasn't been able to do, a ton. But we're going to go with a small sample size here. In a small sample size, 6 2/3 innings, a 135 ERA, a 0.90 WHIP. Sorry about that, and 8 strikeouts. So basically, a guy that is a little bit on the older side, as Thomas and I had talked about, but has dealt with some injuries. So just somebody to watch and how he's performed. And then number 5, the guy that was drafted in the round before him in the same draft out of BYU, and that's Cy Nielsen, a lefty reliever. He's pitching in Greensboro right now. This is a guy that pitched in Greensboro last year as well. Might have been a little bit of an advanced placement. for the year after his draft in his first full season. Didn't perform great in Greensboro last year. 46 and 2/3 innings, a 4.44 ERA, a 1.414 WHIP. 53 walks, 53 Ks, 21 walks, but is quote unquote repeating the level this year. You would see a lot of guys after they'd been drafted the year after that spend a year in Bradenton. So, staying in Greensboro so far this season, 22 and a third innings pitched, a 2.01 ERA, a 1.030 WHIP, has struggled with the walks a little bit during that time, 10 walks, but 26 Ks. And for anybody, we're talking about Greensboro has not given up a single home run. Those are the top 5 Pirates prospects, but I did want to talk about one more thing. Given my just real quick 2-second thing on, or my 2 cents on Henry Davis being called back up, I think right now this is a promotion due to necessity. I mean, Grant Cook, a great defensive catcher. It's hard to have him at the back of the lineup when you have other guys ahead of him that are also struggling. You have Joey Bart on the IL. You have Jason DeLay just working his way back from an IL stint. So, I mean, calling Henry Davis back up, the one thing that I looked at here was Henry Davis over the past few weeks has a K rate, even though he has a 189 WRC plus, has been hitting some home runs, has over a 33% strikeout rate, does have a walk rate that's up around 11%. But the biggest thing for me, it's something I've been pointing out, I feel like each week, and something that I talk about incessantly, is right now he started 11 games at catcher. He's also started 11 games at DH. So I don't know what they're going to do with him when he comes back up and how much he's going to catch. Andrew McCutchen has been hitting extremely well in the DH spot, but I felt like the best thing for Henry Davis is to maybe stay down there for another couple weeks, maybe even possibly a month. But I don't even know what you do if Andrew McCutchen's still hitting well. But for Henry Davis, for me, it was splitting time between catcher and DH. So hopefully Henry hits the ground running here. Hopefully all of the reservations that I have, don't come to fruition. But it's just something I want to talk about for a couple seconds with you guys. I'm going to try to run through these to keep this one under 40 minutes so we could at least say 30-something minutes a Bucks. Maybe that won't happen. This past weekend, I took it easy. So I went out there, and I do look at times for the best non-alcoholic beers, for the times where it's just like, I love the taste of beer. I wouldn't have a minor league news and brews if I did not like the taste of beer. So some weekends when I decide to take it easy, I'm looking for the best non-alcoholic. And I think I may have found it. For you guys out there, Brewdog. Brewdog is a brewery that I believe started in Scotland, went to London, then came to the U.S., and I believe the Columbus area has a brew tap room or a brew pub or something in the Cleveland area. But I've always liked their beers, and they did non-alcoholic versions of some of my favorites. If you can see this, this is the Brewdog Punk AF. It's a West Coast style IPA. I give all of these, just to go through them, I give all of these a 450, knock them down to 400. Like I said, the best non-alcoholics that I've had. The next one is their Hazy AF. And this is their New England style IPA, also non-alcoholic. The Easy Street Golden. And the one thing I will say is I think that's why I'll get this pack again for those weekends I'm taking it easy and on Easy Street, is because they are a very hop-heavy beer to begin with, most of their beers. And even their Golden Ale, if you get a sampler pack of non-alcoholics at times, that Golden Ale will basically taste like water. This one didn't. It definitely still had some hops to it. So I would recommend that. And then also their Elvis AF. And this one is a grapefruit infused IPA. Like I said, all of these ones have great tasting hops. So if it's a weekend that you're going to a picnic or something and you want to bring, a 12 pack with you or something, and just kind of relax and get the taste of the beer without the side effects of the beer, I guess it would be. I would definitely go check out the Brew Dog, their non-alcoholic sampler pack. But until next time, everybody, let's go Indians. Let's go Curve. Let's go Hoppers. Let's go Bradenton Marauders. Let's go FCL Pirates. And for the first time with opening day happening here today, let's go DSL Pirates, both squads. And we'll be back next week.